Well, hi everyone. Today I'm starting a new podcast, and I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go. So just learning kind of how to do it. The podcast is called "Let's Talk About Anything," which pretty much says what it's on the tin. So we're going to be talking about anything. Hopefully, over time, I'm going to have guests on. I'm going to have people on talking about different issues, not just Ireland issues, global issues, what's happening in the likes of Ukraine, Gaza, stuff like that. Um, so this is just a quick one. It's a quick episode, and because obviously me being Irish, I suppose I'm going to be talking about the Irish general election, which is going to be held on November the 29th. Now, um, I most likely won't be voting because I can't get there unless I can get like a last minute flight that will allow me to fly in and out and vote and out the gap. We'll just have to see how that goes. So, um, you have various parties. Obviously, you have the current outgoing government, which is a coalition government between Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and the Green Party. Okay, and then you have in opposition, you have Sinn Féin, you have Labour, Social Democrats, you have Independence for Independent Ireland, which is kind of like a grouping of independent politicians. And then you have the independents that are not part of that group, and then you've other ones. People before profit would be another one, and there's quite a few more, right? The three big issues, I suppose, really are health, immigration, and sorry, my apologies, housing, health, education, and immigration. They're probably the top four, realistically. Because the Irish government got a big payout from Apple, 14 billion, a case that they actually fought alongside of Apple to say that they weren't entitled to that money. European Court said differently. And the opposition are jumping on the government saying basically, ye fought a case saying ye didn't want the money. 14 billion, a lot of wage. Um, so I don't think the government are that stupid. I think basically what they said to themselves was they knew that the European Court was going to was going to say that yes, the Irish government is entitled, that the Irish state is entitled to that money, and but it looks good when you're the Irish government saying to the big guys, the big business, saying to Apple, look, we're with you on this. We're going to go to court and say we're really not entitled to that money, so we're supporting you. The reality of the situation, I think the European Court was always going to go in favour and say that the Irish state was entitled to the 14 billion. Um, so, so anyway, so where we are is there's 14 billion quid sitting in the Irish coffers, or it's on its way. I think apparently 3 billion has already landed, but the rest is on the way. So of course we're in election time, right? There's all kind of promises being made, and of course, so for example, I'll try and take you through kind of bit by bit. So you've got Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are pretty much saying the same thing. They're saying we'll build over the next 5 years, we will build 303,000 houses. How we're going to do that is we are going to increase what they call the Help to Buy scheme. The Help to Buy scheme is that if you have been paying tax on it for a number of years, you've been saving as well. So it basically, in effect, they're giving back you the tax up to 30 grand. I think they're increasing that now to 40. So they're going to give you 40 grand back of the tax you already paid, right? That's pretty much how it is. Then there's also the shared equity scheme. So it's and these aids are good. They're welcome and all the rest of it. However, here's the caveat, right? Those schemes to help people buy their first time home, they are inflationary. Okay, a builder sees that, a builder says, "Oh, up the price of the house." So, because it's kind of come from government, but it's inflationary, right? That's the main thing. So all these kind of incentives the government or the builders put the price up. They cause house prices. Labour Party is one I find interesting now. So the Labour Party is, they're saying they will, first of all, because this issue with rent as well, the rents have gone through the roof. First of all, they'll put a rent cap or rent freeze for the next 3 years. That's a good idea. Then they will also say that they will put a ban on no-fault evictions for the next 3 years, I think it is. So let me give you an example of that. A no-fault eviction, a big problem that was happening was, right, when a person was renting a house and maybe halfway through 6 or 8 months or whatever, the landlord wants to put the rent up, but he can't by law because the people are already in there. There's a certain period in which I think it's like every 4 years or something like that. But he wants to up the rent, right? So he can't do it to them. So he turns around and he says to the tenants, he said, I've got terribly bad news. My daughter's coming home from New York, or my son is coming back from Australia, and they've nowhere to live. So look, unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to leave because they need to move back into the house, right? So the people move out. He gets new tenants in because his daughter's not coming from New York and the son is not coming from Australia. He gets new tenants in, and then he can raise the rent, right? So that's what's called a no-fault eviction, all right? Another no-fault eviction is if the owner of the house just decides to sell the house. When I was living in Ireland, it happened to me. I was renting a house and I really liked being in the house. And all of a sudden the owner came along to me and he said, look, Morris, I'm terribly sorry. And I was only a few months into the rent. And he said, look, Morris, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the house. I'm giving you a month's notice, he said, because I put the house on the market, right? So that's a no-fault eviction, right? It happened to me, as I said. And so they're going to put a ban on that. So that's just give you an idea of what that is. So they're going to ban on that, right? Now, they're going to slowly do away with the government schemes, what I called, it was talked about earlier, the Help to Buy scheme and the shared equity scheme, because again, it's inflationary, right? So what they're going to do is, now, go back a little bit in time. Back years ago, the Irish government brought out a savings plan called the SSIA. Many of you that will see this in Ireland will know this. And basically, if you saved 200 quid a month or 50 quid a month, the government matched it. So let's say over a period of 4 or 5 years, you've built up a savings plan of, say, 5 grand, right? The government gave you another 5. And when all those policies came due, and I think it was around the early noughties, I can't remember the exact time it was on, but it created a bonanza. It created a spending boom in Ireland because people had all these savings policies. I remember my mother got it as well. She got a nice bit of a wad of cash out of it. And so the government basically matched what you had saved over a period of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it was. The idea is the same, okay? So you have a savings plan, right? And you're saving to buy your house, a special savings plan, similar to the SSIA. And so let's say you've been doing your best and you're saving £1,000 a month, right? You're saving £1,000 a month, and so let's call it 12 grand a year over 5 years. My maths is rubbish, but I reckon that's about 60 grand off the top of my head. And so the government will throw another 60 grand with that, right? Now, I don't know if they'll go all the way to the 60 grand, but the general idea is that what you save, the government will match. So instead of having 60 grand, I'm just taking over a 5-year period, right? So instead of a 60 grand purse to buy your house, you now have 120. Now, the beauty about that is that's not inflationary because it is your savings policy. The builder doesn't know about it. The builder will never know about it. You're just going to the builder and you say, right, I've got 120 grand to put down in the house, right? And there you go. So the builder doesn't know about it. So therefore, it's not inflationary. It's not going to cause the house prices to build up. So I do like that idea. I like the cap on, or the freeze on the rent increases, and I like the abolishing of no-fault evictions, right? They're also saying they will get the Land Development Agency as well to get more involved in providing social and affordable housing as well. So that's Labour. Now, here's an interesting one, is the Sinn Féin one, right? Sinn Féin are the main opposition party in Ireland at this moment in time, because you've got Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael are Nowadays, it's like they're pretty much the same party. Their policies are very, very similar. During the campaign, they've been picking at each other and snapping at each other, which is probably all a bit false, really, because it's all a bit false because, let's face it, they're going to end up in government together. No matter what way this works, lads, they are going to end up in government, right? Because the numbers, no one party has enough candidates. The magic number to reach, by the way, is 88 seats, right? To form a government, you must win 88 seats, right? And that's for the slim majority, right? Now, no one party has enough candidates to do that, to reach 88. For example, the party with the biggest amount of candidates is Sinn Féin, and Sinn Féin have 71, right? If Sinn Féin won every single seat, and it's highly unlikely that they're going to do that, they're not going to do it as well as they did in the last election. Had they 71 candidates in the last election, most likely they'd be in government now, but they messed up. So they don't have the popularity now that they had back then. There's been a few scandals with them, which I'm not going to get into. No. So at best, I don't even think they'll do as well as the last time. I think Sinn Féin will probably get 30 seats. Okay? And if all the independents came together, right? Independents for Ireland, the single independents, whatever, and if between them they all won 50 seats, right? Let's just say that all the independents, word has it, they may get 50 seats between them all. And if they all came together and Sinn Féin joined up with them, which is not likely to happen because independents by nature are independent, right? They have their own views. Some of them are feisty, some others, whatever. So that mixture would only bring you 80, right? So that ain't going to happen, okay? The most likely mixture will be, or coalition will be Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, right? I think between the two of them will win about 70 seats, maybe 72, right? So let's call it 72. They need 16 seats, right? So the likelihood I would see it is doing a deal with the Social Democrats, which are the left, and the Labour Party, right? Polls seem to show them doing actually quite well in the polls at the moment. Nothing magical is going to happen with them. They're not going to explode, but they're kind of gaining enough ground, I think, that that they can make a difference. They could be kingmakers. I firmly believe they could be kingmakers, Labour and the Social Democrats. If the Social Democrats and Labour don't work out, because the independents could still play a role here. The independents will be very much, how will I say, they could be kingmakers. This especially Independence Ireland, right? They're like a political party, only they're not a political party. They've grouped, they've come together, but they don't have a party whip that can kick them all into shape, right? But they could make a difference now. These guys could make a difference, and I think, especially in rural Ireland, I think they could make a big difference, and they could be kingmakers. The problem with them is if they go into government, can they keep their shit together? Can they agree to make a 5-year government work? I can't see it happening, right? They may well form a government, but there could be a couple of times those boys pull out, not agree with this or not agree with that, and I'm not sure that'll work. But no matter what way you spin the dice, in my opinion, it is going to be Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, or probably Fine Gael will probably win more seats than Fianna Fáil, so probably Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. Neither two parties don't seem to want the Green Party in again. But in the heel of the hunt, who knows? When they want to stay in power, they'll nearly do a deal with the devil, to stay in power. That's politics for you. So that's kind of now I want to get on to, so that's the makeup is going to be Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, and I think it's going to be a mixture of independents, Social Democrats, and maybe Labour as well. That's where I'm at with that. Getting back to housing and Sinn Féin. Okay, Sinn Féin are the party that are saying that they will build the most houses. So Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael are saying 303,000 houses over the next 5 years, right? And I've already said how they reckon to do it, the Help to Buy scheme and so on. Labour, I think, are saying in around 250,000 houses. A lot of them are going to be affordable and social houses. Labour want to use the Land Development Agency to become a national builder, right? So basically, anybody employed by this national builder, Land Development Agency, will become a civil servant, will be employed by the state, pensionable job and all the rest of it. It sounds fantastic. It will take a couple of years to implement it. So they'd have to keep with the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael plan while they're building up the Land Development Agency. It's not going to happen overnight, and the housing in Ireland is urgent. So while the current government one it's working, it's not working fast enough. I want to be very clear on that, but it is working. But if you're scrapping that, and this is what Labour want to do, and a lot of the others, they want to get rid of these Help to Buy scheme and shared equity scheme. Sinn Féin say they'll phase it out. They will build houses on government land. Now here's the deal. So you go and you can buy a house through the Sinn Féin manifesto, through their housing plan. You can buy the house. You will not own the land that the house is on, right? You'll own the house, but you'll not own the land that the house is on. Number one. Number two, let's say in 5 or 6 years or 10 years or whatever, you decide you want to sell the house. You cannot sell the house to any Joe Soap. You cannot go into an estate agent and sell it to any Joe willy-nilly. It has to be a person that needs social housing. You cannot sell it for more than what you paid for it, apart from maybe inflation and any works you might have carried out on the house. Okay? So, very important. So, from a speculative point of view, forget it. Okay? You cannot sell the house for more than you pay for it. It also must be sold to a person with a kind of a social housing need. Okay? Probably first-time buyer or whatever. Okay? Now, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are attacking Sinn Féin's housing policy, because what they're saying is, and this is probably, I think, could be a problem for Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin are saying, you know, you can mortgage the property. The Irish Banking Federation are not confirming, because remember, you own the house, you don't own the land. It's the government owns the land, right? So this has never been done before in Ireland from a public housing point of view, from a housing point of view, right? Where banks will give you a mortgage to buy a house where you don't own the land on it. So obviously this is a potential issue for the banks, and the banks will want to know whether they'll get their money back, which is fair enough. Now, to be promising that on an election, when you don't have confirmation from the banks that say, yes, we'll give you the mortgage, all the banks are saying is, when you're in government, we will enter into negotiations, and we all know how long negotiations take. So again, that isn't going to be immediate, would be my opinion. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I mean, if you could get a mortgage on those houses and you need a house that potentially it'll knock, you know, the price of the land knock 100 grand off the house, happy days. It's a very good policy if you can get a mortgage on it. And fair enough, if you're selling it on down the road, you're getting much paid for it. And, you know, but you can't make money in it, right? And the difficulty where you can't make money in it, in my view, would be, let's just say you buy a house when you're starting out in life, right? To buy a house, you pay 150,000 euros for a house, right? 5 or 6 or 10 years down the line, you decide you've got now a couple of kids, you need to get a bigger house, okay? And in an ideal situation, what you want is, you want a situation where your house has gone up in value, and let's just say your house, in a normal situation, your house is now 190 grand or 200 grand, okay? So you're going to buy house number 2, a little bit bigger. This is now costing 300,000, but now you've 200 to go for instead of 150. Whereas if you bought the house, now the prices I'm talking about are way higher, by the way, in Ireland, okay? I'm just using examples. So let's say, And that's it. So your house you're selling, your first home that you're selling, will have gone up in value. That gives you more money to buy your second house, because the second house is going to be a little bit bigger, because there's now a couple of little bambinos after arriving, right? That's a simple plan, okay? Now, with the Sinn Féin plan, you bought your first house, and let's say the bank gave you the mortgage on it because you don't own the land, and you paid, let's just say you paid 200,000 for it, okay? And in 10 years' time, you've seen a lovely house over in Sandyford, or even you decide to move down to Cork or wherever, and the house you want to buy is now 350,000. Okay? You still, 10 years later, there's no increased value in the home you're selling, because you can't sell it for more than what you pay for it. So you're selling for 200 grand, and now you have to get a much bigger mortgage. You still have to come up with 150 grand more, plus the purchasing costs and all the rest of it. So, so there's no. It's difficult, I think, after 10 years to move from that 200 grand that you bought. You can't make money in it. There's no increased value in the house, because you're not allowed to have the increased value in the house. The house itself, including the land, could be worth 400,000, but you can't. You only pay 200,000. So therefore, you must sell it in 10 years' time, allowing for inflation or whatever, but for the 200,000, right? So there's no capital for you selling that house 10 years later. There is no capital appreciation, right? It's the same. So my issue would be that. So it's not, because maybe in the beginning when you bought that house for 200,000, it was the only house you could get, and great, fantastic. And if the banks give you the mortgage on it, it's a great lift up the ladder. It's a great plan if it works that way. But where it catches you, because now you've grown up a little bit, you're earning a bit more money, you've a better job, and now you've got a couple of bambinos after coming along, and now you want to buy a bigger home, but you've no capital appreciation on your first one. The house itself might be worth 500,000, might be worth 400,000 because of the land that it's on that you don't own, but because there's no capital appreciation for you, you can't get more than the 200 grand and a bit of inflation or whatever. So that to me is where there's holes in it. There's holes in the Sinn Féin manifesto from that point of view. I don't, like I said, I don't see Sinn Féin. I don't see Sinn Féin going for that. Again, the Social Democrats. Let's get on to that, because I've explained Labour and I've explained Sinn Féin. Let's get on to the Social Democrats. The Social Democrats, they want to again utilise the Land Development Agency. They want to utilise the Land Development Agency to become the national builder, basically, right? They want to get rid of all the incentives that the current government have. The Help to Buy scheme, the shared equity scheme, and so on. They want to get rid of all that, and they want to basically the Land Development Agency to do the building basically for the government. Okay, so I don't see that as working. They want to do like Labour. They want to do a rent freeze for 3 years. They want to do a freeze on no-fault evictions for 3 years. And what Labour and the Social Democrats also want is, let's say I have a house and I'm renting the house to Mary and John, right? And I do want to sell the house. I go to Mary and John. I say, look, Mary and John, are ye in a position, are you looking to buy a house? And if they say, yeah, we are, do you like this one? Right? So you, as the owner of the house, are giving your tenants the option to buy the house first. You're giving them first option on buying the house. So that's what Labour and the Social Democrats are wanting as well. Aon 2, which is a break off of Sinn Féin from a number of years ago. Padraig Tobin is the only TD for Aon 2. He had a good idea, I thought, on housing, was on new builds, to get rid of the VAT on new builds for 2 to 3 years. Now that would be fantastic, because if you're going to buy a house for 350 or 400 grand even, well, my God, straight away that's between 60 and 80 grand off the price of the house. I think it's a very good idea. I do actually think that's a very good idea. Where I fall down now, people vote for, whoever people vote for is their own business, and that's the whole point of what I'm saying here as well. I'm not saying I'm giving the options, but one option I am going to say is I personally would not vote for AN2 for one reason only. His housing policy is actually not a bad one. He recently stated that he would look at the possibility of reversing abortion rights for women in Ireland. Now, considering he is the only elected representative for AN2 and he is a man, and as I've always said, lads, when it comes to abortion, it ain't none of my business, it ain't none of his business, it is the woman's business, what she does with her body and what she chooses to do with her body, and I'm not getting involved in that. But certainly, and I was surprised when I heard that Peadar Tóibín saying that they'd have to discuss reversing it, and straight away he's out in my book. So I'm not going to say who else I would vote for or would not vote for, because I myself am not fully decided. I'm going to be honest with you, lads. I'm not fully decided on it. And so I would just have to, I'd have to think about, I really would have to, I'm thinking hard about it if I was voting. If I can get a last minute flight to nip in and do it, all the better. And because I would like to vote and being honest about it. So yeah, we just got to see where we're at. And so lads, the podcast, as I said, I don't know how much time, by the way, we're limited on these things. So I think you can do up to half an hour. I don't know, but I'm at 26 minutes anyway. So basically, so the podcast is called Let's Talk About Everything, because that's what we're going to do. So this, if I can get it onto the Spotify thing there, this will be my first episode. And sure, we'll see how it all goes, lads. No. And hopefully along the line we'll have a couple of guests or whatever. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed this little trip, a little chat about the Irish general election. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. Let's face it, the politicians are confusing us all anyway, so I may as well just add a little bit to it. So guys, look after yourselves. Think hard about who you're going to vote for, but most importantly, vote. I would say that to anyone. It is vitally important that you vote, because I always say, if you don't vote, you don't have a voice. There's no point in you bitching about what the government is doing or what they're not doing or whatever if you haven't voted. Tough shit. So, as I said, if you vote, you have a voice, and if you don't, well, you don't. Good luck now, and good night. It's still going because that didn't work for me. Okay, I'm going to reach forward and turn this off.